Jesus took his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. He told them to sit and wait while he went to pray. On returning, he found they were asleep. Jesus woke them up so that they might keep watch while he prayed. Again he went and prayed. Again when he returned, he found the disciples asleep on the ground. He returned a third time to pray. Coming back to the disciples, he woke them. In the distance, he could see a crowd approaching, carrying torches. Judas was with the crowd and approaching Jesus. He greeted him with a kiss. This was the sign that Judas had agreed to identify Jesus. They seized Jesus. The disciples ran away afraid. Jesus was led off to the house of Caiaphas, the high priest. Peter was sitting in the high priest's courtyard. When he was asked by one of the servant girls if he was with Jesus, Peter denied it. A little later, another servant girl said she had seen Peter with Jesus, but Peter denied it. A third time he was challenged by some men in the courtyard, that being a Galilean he must know Jesus. Peter got angry and denied for the third time that he knew Jesus. The cock crowed, and Peter remembered what Jesus had told him, that before the cock crowed, he would say 3 times he did not know him. Peter left the courtyard crying. Then morning came. The chief priests and the elders of the nation met in conference to plan the death of Jesus. They then put him in chains and led him off to hand him over to Pilate, the Roman governor. When Judas, the traitor, saw that Jesus had been condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 silver pieces to the chief priests and elders.
I have sinned. I have brought an innocent man to his death.
What is this
to us?
To us. It is your responsibility.
Your responsibility.
So he threw the money down in the temple and left them, and went and hanged himself. Taking the money, the priests and elders argued.
This cannot be put in the temple fund.
It is the money
of blood.
So after discussions, they used it to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. This was to fulfill what the prophet Jeremiah had said. They took the 30 silver coins, the amount the people of Israel had agreed to pay for him, and used the money to buy the potter's field as the Lord had commanded me. Jesus was now brought before Pilate. As he stood there, Pilate asked him,
"Are you the King of the Jews?"
"The words are yours."
And to the charges laid against him by the chief priests and elders, he made no reply. Then Pilate said to him,
"Do you not hear all this evidence that is brought against you?"
But Jesus refused to answer one word to Pilate's astonishment. At the festival season, it was the governor's custom to release one prisoner chosen by the people. There was then in custody a well-known criminal called Barabbas. When the crowd had assembled, Pilate asked them,
"Which would you like me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, called Messiah?"
Pilate knew that it was out of spite that they had brought Jesus before him. While Pilate was sitting in court, a message came to him from his wife, that he was to have nothing to do with Jesus, who was innocent, for she had been troubled about it in a dream. Meanwhile, the chief priests and elders had persuaded the crowd to ask for the release of Barabbas and to have Jesus put to death. So when Pilate asked,
"Which of the two do you wish me to release to you?"
they said,
Barabbas.
Barabbas.
"Then what am I to do with Jesus, called Messiah?"
Crucify him.
Crucify him.
Crucify him.
"Why? What harm has he done?"
But they shouted all the louder,
Crucify him.
Crucify him.
Crucify him.
Crucify him.
Pilate could see that nothing was being gained and a riot was starting. So he took water and washed his hands in full view of the crowd, saying,
I am not responsible for the death of this man. This is your doing.
His
blood
His blood
be
will be
on
on us and
and
on
on
our
our
children.
children.
Pilate then released Barabbas to them, but Jesus he had flogged and handed him over to be crucified. Then Pilate's soldiers took Jesus into the government's headquarters, where they collected the whole company round him. First they stripped him and dressed him in a scarlet robe, and plaiting a crown of thorns, they placed it on his head, with a cane in his right hand. Falling on their knees before him, they mocked him.
Hail,
Hail!
Hail,
King
King
of
of the Jews!
They spat on him and used the cane to beat him around the head. Finally, when the mockery was over, they took off the robe and dressed him in his own clothes. They led him away to be crucified. On their way out of the city, they met a man from Cyrene called Simon. The soldiers forced him to carry Jesus' cross. So they arrived at the place called Golgotha, which is the place of the skull, and there they offered Jesus wine mixed with a bitter substance. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. After fastening him to the cross with nails, they divided his clothes among themselves by throwing dice. Then they sat down to keep watch over him. Above his head was a notice on which was written, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." They crucified 2 criminals with him also, one on the right, the other on the left. People passing by shouted insults at him.
You're going to tear down the temple and build it up again in 3 days. Save yourself if you are indeed the Son of God.
So too the chief priests with the lawyers and elders mocked him as well.
He saved others, but he cannot save himself. King of Israel indeed. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe him.
Did he trust in God? Let God rescue him if he wants him, for he said he was God's son.
Even the 2 criminals were crucified with him, insulted him. Darkness fell over the whole land from midday until 3 in the afternoon, when Jesus cried aloud,
Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani.
which means, my God, why did you abandon me?" Some of the bystanders, on hearing this, said,
He
He
is calling
Calling
Elijah.
Elijah.
One of them ran back at once, took a sponge, soaked it in cheap wine, and held it to his lips on the end of a cane. But others said,
let
Let us
Let us
see
see
if
See if
Elijah
Elijah is
is
coming
coming
to save him.
Jesus again gave a loud cry and breathed his last. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. There was an earthquake, the rocks split and the graves opened, and many of God's people who had died were raised to life. They left their graves, and after Jesus rose from death, they went into the holy city where many saw them. When the centurion and his men were keeping watch, saw the earthquake and all that was happening, they were filled with awe and said,
Truly,
Truly,
this man
man
is the
is
Son of
Son
God.
of
Son
God.
of God.